Okay, today we're going to make our leaves for our violets. And we're going to start with a 1 inch basic frame, or 2.5 centimeters, a pointed top, and a round bottom. And I don't like my leaves to all be the same size, so I'm going to make them from 9 to 13 total rows. But sort of just start making the leaf, and if you like the size, use that size. It's all good. We are not going to pass the wire through the beads twice, so whatever wire you want to use is fine. This is a standard paddle wire, and I'm also using those same green beads that I did the stems and stuff with. I don't know if it's easier to see. Just a basic green bead, whatever you want for your leaf, it's all good. So again, I'm going to start by measuring, get an inch, give or take. And because the goal is not to have every leaf be exactly the same size, it's fine if you're a little sloppy in the measuring. Okay. Now, our stem is going to be our loop. So you want to make a loop bigger than normal, right? And in this case, we're going to have, we're going to use both sides. We're going to use both sides of the loop for our stem. So I can't make my stem any longer than this, but minus what I use when I make the leaf. So just make your loop a little extra big. So I've got like a 10-inch loop here. So it's 5 inches. Right, 10 total inches, 5 inches, and I'm gonna twist that and get it set up. This is just a standard basic frame. However you like to do this is fine. And some of you are not going to want to watch me make this because I go anti-clockwise. I don't go clockwise, and I think most people do it the other way. So just keep that in mind. If it's going to throw you off, don't watch it. Okay, you're just going to make a standard leaf with a basic frame, and there's lots of technique videos out there on how to do that. But yeah, I go this way, and if that's going to bother you, just fast forward. And so I'm going to do a round bottom, pointed top, and yeah, it's just the standard leaf. There's nothing different until the end. So if you're going to not watch me make this, that's fine. Just come back before you cut anything, okay? Okay, so round bottom, pointed top. And it took me a long time to make pointed tops the way I wanted them to, and like trying to think about those angles and that kind of thing. And I still think about, I want to make that angle very steep if I'm making a pointed top, and this wire is stiff, so you gotta make sure you get those kinks out. And then with the round, you want to go in at a 90-degree. And I think when most people start French beading, it's very difficult to make very round and very pointed. If you struggle making a pointed top, one way to get the hang of it, and I think to get you start thinking about the angles, is if you put some extender beads on the top wire, it can sort of help you make it more pointed because you're putting some beads on. And I know when I first was working out how to do pointed tops, I would always sort of be like, oh, I've got to leave some space. I've got to have an extra bead, and that's an empty, like where an empty bead would be. And that's one way to think about it, to try and get those pointed tops going, or tops or bottoms. To this day, I still find it a lot easier to make nice pointed tops than make nice pointed bottoms. Okay, so there's 5 rows. And this is a stiff wire, so it's a little harder on the fingers, but I like how it holds the shape really well. Okay. Oh, I was just looking over at my computer because I don't know what the sound was, but looks like no big deal. Okay. And I as I'm going, and I realize it's maybe not the easiest to see, but there's going to be better videos on how to make these, you know, just a basic frame. I pull it tight, you know, I stretch it and make sure it's straight after every row, and I try and shape it as I'm going. And a lot of times I end up, you know, goes off at a diagonal sometimes on the backside or on the bottom. It happens. And I used to just really obsess over, oh, it's not super straight and that kind of thing. But, you know, leaves grow all different kinds of ways, and it's all fine. And when you put them together, things look really good, even when you're like, oh, I don't like this individual petal, or I don't like this individual leaf. They all tend to be fine once you put them together. And so I started French beading because I collected French beaded flowers. I didn't even know what they were called. My mom and I always, since I was a young child, would buy them. We did a lot of antique shows and yard sales and that kind of thing. And we always bought these beaded flowers for all her pottery vases and wall pockets and stuff. And I was always interested in it. And then it was years later, I found a kit from Martha Stewart, of all places. And that sort of got me making my first flowers. So that's 2, 4, so 8 rows, and the center one makes 9. I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger. This one's looking a little small. If you want it to be more round, then start with 3/4 of an inch. You know, you can also have it be more open, more empty space between the rows. I think my earlier style was much more open. Now I have them more closed and closed packed. But I've been looking at some of my older flowers that I made, and I'm like, oh, I really like how the empty space is really part of the design and not, you know, something I'm trying to avoid. Have these little black-eyed Susans, and I was looking at the leaves, and they were very open, lots of space between each row, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty neat. So there's all kinds of different ways. So now I've got 2, 4, 6. So that's going to be 13 rows. Right? 2, 4. No. Okay. So that's 11 rows. That's 11 rows. If we do one more, that'll be 13. I'm sort of liking the way this one looks. Okay. So that's what I'm going to go with. All right. I'm going to snip the end of that off. And you can obviously just bend this down and snip it off. For some reason, I always bend it through and bring it back. I'm paranoid, which is totally unnecessary. But that's the way I have always done it. Oh, screen went blank. And now I'm going to trim that. And I try to make sure that they won't poke me. So a lot of times I'll take little tweezers and push that in, but I don't have them here on this desk. Okay, so there's my leaf. It's still attached to the spool wire. And then I am going to wrap this a few times. Okay. So, and I can't help myself. I have to keep shaping it. All right. So our stem is going to be no longer than this, right? And we have a choice. I can trim this off and leave some length, and I can actually use that to start with a thicker stem. I'm going to wrap it with beads on it, and that gives me something. Let's look at these vintage flowers. They did not do that on here. Okay. So sorry, I thought I had an example where they had done that. I guess I don't have that right down here. Okay, so so you can hold this and untwist, because we're going to put beads on both sides of this, and we're just going to have the two wires. You can twist them or just leave them as a double stem. Either way is totally fine. It'll all look good when you put them into a bundle. You could do this the same way we made the stems for the flowers, and put both of them through if you have beads that would fit that way. I've just never done that with the leaves, thinking that they might have a thicker stem or that type of thing. Okay, so I'm going to cut this and leave this a little bit long. Putting a knot in the end of my spool wire and set that down on the floor. Okay. So since the next step we're going to do is assembly anyway, I'm going to put the beads on this stem. I'm going to cut my loop down at the bottom. Okay, so now I've got two wires. I'm going to put beads on both of those. And if I want to have a little thicker part at the top, I can put beads on here. And so and I'm trying to remember the last time I did that, if I did that first or second. Maybe I did it after. Okay, so now I just need to get some beads on both of these stems, both of these wires, what was our loop. And it is much harder to spin beads onto your wire on camera than any other time. Okay, so the other thing I have to sort of estimate is how long am I going to want my stem to be? Am I going to want it longer than this? Then I need to put more beads on right now. And I think I might want it a little bit longer. Or maybe I don't. It really depends. You need to think about your vase and that kind of thing, and how you're going to bundle them together. I'm going to put a few more on. Okay. And then I'm just going to fold over the end so that I don't lose those off that wire. And I'm going to take my second wire and put this roughly the same amount of beads on. Okay, so I've got roughly the same amount of beads on these two wires. I can take some off, put them on, put some more on, try and get just a few more on. Okay, so pretty close. Okay, so I'm just going to twist these two wires together down here. Make a nice neat twist at the end and do it several times. Okay. So now I've got my leaf on a stem. And I usually twist the stem, and if you look at vintage flowers, sometimes they have those twisted, sometimes they have them straight. And if you're looking at this super close up, it does look a little bit odd, like, why do I have this twisted stem? But when you put them together into with the flowers and stuff, it's just going to look like a thicker stem. So why did I leave this wire? Because I have this little bit of wire that I want to clean up. So I'm going to put some beads on that. Okay, I just spun some beads right there, and I'm going to wrap it. And if you have ever jeweled the stem on any of your work, that's all I've done. But I've used, this is the wire that was connected to the spool. So I've used that. And then I wrap the bare one around an extra time or two. I'm sure it doesn't need to be done twice. I'm just a little paranoid. And so now I want to trim that really close. Okay, so there is my leaf, okay, with its stem. And you can wait and do the stem when you're assembling everything. And I'm seeing that little wire sticking out. I'm trying to push it in. Okay, so there's the leaf. I think that was that was an 11 row. And I keep shaping it because I can't keep my hands off it. And there's the stem. And this little extra step of just taking that where the tail wire, right, what was connected to the spool, if you wrap that a few times, just makes it nice and clean right there. I don't know if that's, it's an extra step you don't need to do. I like the way it looks. Often I'll do it a little bit longer. So there's the leaf. And if you're doing sort of the same number that I had done, where I've got, around 11 flowers, 7 to 8 buds, something along those lines, 5 to 7 leaves, something like that. And we are going to take leaves, buds, and flowers and assemble them into little bundles. That's the next video.